On the first encounter, Motion 5 can look daunting, and the best way to get used to it is to start simple and add your knowledge a little bit at a time. My intention is to introduce different Motion 5 functions and show you how they can be manipulated from the default settings. You'll soon find how Motion 5 becomes quite addictive once you have those basics covered. In a recent tutorial, I promised I'd show more about text behaviours. So this tutorial will show you all about text behaviours. And in 3D, I'll produce a custom title that you can build yourself or download for free from my website, and see below. My name's Bruce, and if we've met before, well, welcome back. Otherwise, please like and subscribe and press the bell so I can make more videos like this for you. In the motion selection window, I'll use a title preset, 50 frames per second and 6 seconds in length. I'm not going to need the drop zone, so I'll delete that. Change the name of group to text group. I'll need another group for the backgrounds that I'm going to use. While the text group is selected, from the object menu, select a new group. It'll appear at the top of the sidebar. Name the new group Backgrounds Group. I want the Backgrounds group to be separate but following the text group. So select the text group and drag it above the Backgrounds group. Drop it when you see the blue line. In the library, select Generators, Color Solid, and drag that inside the background group. Change the color to white, just verging on blue. Select the inspector and select the Text tab and Format. I'll use the Impact font. I'll center that and set the size to 288. Select the text and type Pop Out. Now in the Advanced section, change the offset Y to center it in the text box. Set the slant to -6 just to make it look a little different. And make sure Editable in FCP is ticked. Select the appearance and make it 3D. It looks a little rounded at this point. I'm going to flatten that at the start by keyframing the depth. Make sure the playhead is at the beginning and set a keyframe to the right of depth. Type 0, which will flatten the 3D effect. Move the playhead 2/3 down the timeline so that the change in effect changes before the end of the timeline. Drag the depth to 600, which will set another keyframe automatically. You can see the changes when the playhead is scrubbed, and also when the arrows are clicked in the keyframe area. And if you're having problems following these instructions and want to see how the title is made up, download it from my website and open it in Motion to see the settings. Click the eye above for the link. Now to continue, set the front edge to square, and that'll emphasize that flat look at the beginning. It comes in at shiny plastic by default, and that's quite nice, but for the exercise, we'll change that to textured. Now let's take a step further by selecting how the sides look. Select Multiple to the right of Materials, set the side to Miscellaneous and Motion, and then by selecting the segment that the side is in, select Show to the right of Reflective Paint, change the colour. I'll use this aqua colour. Select Custom to the right of Paint Job, select Vivid and select a light blue. And there are a couple of other options to look at. The front edge will enhance the shape. Select the arrows and set this to rounded. The edge can be adjusted, and I'll set this to 2.7. Now that there's a front edge, let's give it a different texture and colour. But if you're thinking of using a shiny metal, well, just be careful because it tends to shimmer when played. I'll show you here with nickel. I'll play that and you can see the shimmer. I'll settle for blue plastic, I think. I've made quite a few more adjustments here than I'd normally do, but I wanted to show you how you can get down to the nitty-gritty detail if you need to. Now I want to introduce you to lights. At the top of the screen, select Light and switch to 3D. The light comes in above the text group. Select the Properties tab and increase the Y to 200. This will take it above the words in the screen, and the Z to 200 to take it back in space, which will reduce that spotlight effect. I'm going to add 2 more lights, so let's name this one Top Light, so I'll know in the future which light is which. I'll add another light from the Add Object button and make sure the playhead is where the words are at their fullest in the timeline. The new light comes in at the centre of the viewer, and it needs to be moved behind the O in Pop-Out. You can move it on the screen by clicking on the red arrow and moving behind the O, or select Properties and type in -70 on the X. I'm going to set changes in colour and intensity as the words appear. By default this is white and the intensity is 100. First, to set the colour changes, make sure the playhead's at the beginning of the timeline, select the Light tab, set a keyframe for the colour, and the diamond will turn yellow. Click the white colour rectangle and the colour wheels appear, select a light pink. Move the playhead down the timeline to where the words pop out are the largest. Click the pink rectangle and select an aqua colour in the colour wheel. Change the colour intensity to 200%. Make sure the playhead is at the beginning and set Fallout Start to 0. Set a keyframe. It's always a good idea to have keyframes for different effects set at the same location in the timeline. You can do this by using the keyframe position arrows in a previously set keyframe. And since the keyframe positions have already been set for the colour changes, I can use those. Click the arrow to the right of colour, the playhead will jump to the next position to the right. And there's now an arrow pointing left to indicate that there's a keyframe before this current position. There's still another right-hand arrow, click it, and the colour has changed to aqua. The playhead's now further down the timeline. And this is where Fall Off Start is to be changed to 450. Fall Off should be set at 40%. I'll play that to see the light change. I want to have another light with the same characteristics behind the word Out. And since I've made multiple changes to this left-hand light, the easiest thing to do is to duplicate that effect with all of its adjustments. But before I do that, let's name this light Left Light. Right-click on the light in the sidebar, select Duplicate. Name it to Right Light and drag it behind the word Out by using the red arrow. I want the right light to start a little later than the left light, so drag that right light in the timeline about a third of the way down the timeline. Play the timeline. I want to show you some text behaviours. Let's explore some. Quiver will pop the words out a little more over the whole sequence without being too outlandish like, say, wacky. Now to add the quiver, make sure the playhead is at the beginning of the timeline and the text is selected. From Behaviours, select Text Continuous Quiver. Now I'm going to add several behaviours that can be turned on and off in Final Cut Pro. And these all come from the Behaviours Text Energetic options. Marbles in, Magnetic in, Inflate in, Flip in, Springy in. And there are two outward sequences, Hop Out and Dolly Out. Dolly out and hop out need to be dragged to the end of the timeline. And don't forget that each of these behaviours needs to be published. So far, I've shown you a solid colour background, but it'd be nice to have a gradient as well that you could choose in Final Cut as well as the solid colour, or turn off both backgrounds altogether in Final Cut. To add a gradient, in the library, select Generators and drag Gradient in the sidebar. And you can see different styles of gradients, so select the gradient category and choose a gradient, drag it inside the gradient in the sidebar. For this exercise, I just want to use 2 colours, so I'll use the sundown gradient. And it'd be good to be able to change the colours in Final Cut. With gradient selected in the sidebar, select the Generator tab and you can see the top and the bottom colours. Click on the far left colour and it appears in the colour rectangle. And this will let you change the colours that appear by default in Final Cut. I'll select a light blue. To the right, select Publish. And now do the same for the other colour. I'll make it mauve in this case, and don't forget to publish that one too. Next I need to add a rig to be able to change between solid, gradient and no background. Click the eyebow for an introduction video for rigs. From the Add Object menu, select Rig. It'll be added at the top of your sidebar. Drag the rig below and inside the background group. Look for the blue line to drop it. Name the rig Background Rig. I'm going to use the pop-up style of rig to be able to hide or show either solid or gradient backgrounds. To do this, I'll use the opacity slider for each of them. Select Color Solid in the sidebar, select the Properties tab. To the right of opacity, click the downward chevron. Select Add to Rig, Background Rig, Add to New Pop-up. A pop-up appears in the sidebar. Change the name to Background Pop-up. This pop-up needs to be published to be usable in Final Cut Pro, so click the downward chevron in the inspector and select Publish. Change Snapshot 1 to solid colour by clicking the Rename button. Now select Gradient in the sidebar, select the Properties tab, select Add to Rig, Background Rig, Add to Background Pop-up. Select the background pop-up in the sidebar, and you'll see in the inspector that the gradient and the solid opacities are now part of that pop-up. And now just a bit of housekeeping. Change the name of Snapshot 2 and Snapshot 3 to Gradient and No Background respectively. So I can now make 3 choices: solid colour, gradient, and neither. That's no background. And this is achieved by changing the opacity settings for each of those. Make sure solid colour is selected in the pop-up for it to be visible. The opacity for gradient needs to be 0 and the solid needs to be 100%. Press the Start button to start the edit. Move the opacity slider for the gradient to 0. The slider for solid stays at 100%. Click Stop Edit. Select Gradient in the pop-up and press Start. Move the Colour Solid slider to 0 and the gradient remains 100% at this time. Select No Background in the pop-up, and this time the solid and the gradient will be 0, so that neither will show. And you can check by selecting the options Solid, Gradient, No Background. But before this can be saved to Final Cut Pro, let's see what the options will look at when you do open it in Final Cut. Select Project at the top of the sidebar. Select the Project tab in the inspector. Make sure the background pop-up is at the top by dragging it. Move the two colours up next and change the names to top colour and bottom colour. The default colours and the default in and out behaviours can also be changed here. Drag the background pop-up below them. Move hop out and dolly out to the bottom. And decide which in and out you want to be default. I'll set inflate in, quiver and dolly out by unticking the others. Now save from the file menu and name the title. I'll save it to the Favourites folder. In Final Cut Pro, drag to the timeline and change the backgrounds. And it would mean more if it was labelled as change background, but I'll change that in Motion in a minute. I'll show you how. You're even able to modify the colours and the 3D text effects by selecting the text tab in the inspector. Now to rename that background pop-up. Right-click on the title in the browser and open in Motion. Rename the pop-up and save it in the File menu. It's updated in Final Cut Pro. There's a lot of information in this tutorial. I hope you found it useful, but as I said before, maybe it's a good idea to download the title from my webpage and then open that in Motion and see how it was produced. So I can make more videos like this for you. Please like and subscribe and press the bell. Thank you for watching.